All right, everybody. My name is Autumn Barnes. I'm an agronomist with the Canola Council of Canada. I'm based here in Lethbridge. Can you all, if you can't hear me, sorry. I'll try and be as loud as possible. So I'm an agronomist with the Canola Council of Canada. I cover the area from Calgary south. And this project that we're going to look at is looking at precision planters compared with an air drill. And we funded this project through the Canola Agronomic Research Program, which gets funded by the provincial grower group. So you farmers here, this is your checkoff dollars at work. We have been getting more and more questions over the years about using a vacuum planter to seed canola. There's a lot of guys who are in seed production who are using planters. And anecdotally, there's a lot of kind of positive messaging around planters. So we wanted to do a study looking at, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, what is the optimum seeding rate? Because we've got a lot of data around optimum plant densities for traditionally like air seed or seeded crops. But when you have that really wide row spacing, it changes things up a little. And as you'll see when you're going through the plots, our higher seeding rates actually are not that great when you're in 22-inch row spacing, even 12-inch row spacing, and the plants are right on top of each other. That's not necessarily the best thing. So there are some challenges and some advantages with planters as well, and Ken's spearheading this project, which is great. So we thought we would maybe start at taking a look through the equipment, which I might let Ken do since he was working on it. But this is the planter that they used, and this is their conserva pack here. So I'll let you take it away probably to discuss the equipment, and then we'll move on to the plots.
All right. How many of you guys know anything about planters? Oh, just barely little hands up. Yeah.
Depends if you're going to put us on the spot, Ken.
Absolutely, I'm putting you on
Actually,
the spot.
How many farmers are here? Just to show of hands. Okay. So of you farmers, have you guys ever seeded canola with a planter? No? Sorry. Go ahead.
Not a problem. So why would we be interested in a planter in the first place? Like what's all the hype?
Better plant spacing.
So plant spacing he mentioned.
Accuracy with depth.
Depth control.
Save on canola seed costs.
Why?
You're putting it in more accurately. You're going to have a better.
You're only going to save if you seed less.
Yeah.
But what is that related to?
Distribution
And
and
Less plant mortality.
that's the one I'm looking for.
okay.
You fail.
It's not a weak question.
I was going to give away a nice pair of glasses on that.
Don't worry, if you
That's
answer
up to
questions
Rob.
throughout this, Ken won't tell you fail if you get it wrong. It's just for Brian.
I will. I am a jerk. I want to have a dialogue with you guys, so if I can get you talking, that's what we want to have. So the biggest... Less disturbance. Okay. Any other...
Seed canola, roguing, cultivating, disease control.
So you think it's just better for everything?
Absolutely.
Okay.
But you want uniformity between crops too, right? You want a planter that you can use multiple crops for.
Depth control.
Okay. Yeah, depth control was mentioned. I think that's a really good one. Any downsides to it?
It's expensive.
You only care about money.
But I'm right that time.
You're absolutely right. I don't have any more prizes though. I'll give you a hat when you cut back there.
Fertilizer.
So fertilizer is a challenge because traditionally where are these planters used?
Corn Belt.
Corn Belt.
And what do they like to do? Yeah, they like to till the hell out of things and put their fertilizer down ahead of time. So when we're trying to adapt things to a more of a zero-till type scenario, the truth is I don't think there's nearly as much experience with these planters in a zero-till type scenario. So one of the biggest barriers to adoption right now is likely cost, and then the logistics surrounding being able to put all of your fertility down. Do you think I can do it with this one though? There's this misdemeanor out there, somebody's like, on the small plot size, that you can't put all of your fertility down on one pass with the planter. And I just talked to Dwayne Kirchner and he's like, well yeah, we can order fertilizer compartment. So what we have here is actually two fertilizers. We've got the granular fertilizer. We've got a side banding double disc opener up in the front here. And then we also have liquid for putting it with the seed. I think the on the Norm planters, you'll see the liquid kits. In fact, we were down on tours in South Dakota, and you'd see the old big buds and four-wheel drives with these massive tanks mounted on the front and on the side, and they put phosphorus down with the seed, but then all of their nitrogen's done ahead of time, so it's relying on tillage. However, these do work pretty well in a zero-till scenario. It does take a while for us to really get a handle on things. So far, we had to make some modifications because we were playing around with row spacings. But I have a bit of a, I have to admit, we actually got this planter for a corn study, and we wanted to study dryland grain corn production. And we thought, well, we've got the piece of equipment, we might as well do canola too. And luckily, with Autumn's help, we did manage to get that project funded. So the corn planting is something that they've, done a really lot of work on. Why do you think they want to use precision planters in corn?
Better yield.
Cost again, yield.
Very low plant populations. You want them evenly distributed.
Optimal plant population.
Yeah, lower plant populations, bigger seed.
And they're
hybrid
using
seed
wider row
costs.
spacing to begin with, so it's not such a challenge like in canola.
Corn actually competes with itself. If you have too many seeds together, then you're sacrificing potential yield. So there is optimal plant population and distribution. And quite frankly, they're way ahead of us when it comes to doing a good job at using the maximum distribution of seed across a field. So in that sense, I think the planters are way advanced to us, to our typical drills, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're the be all and end all. Sometimes canola is an absolutely amazing crop, and you don't need that level of precision. Yeah, you can sacrifice 40-50% of your seed cost and still have a perfectly good crop. So the cost side of things is there, but getting air carts hooked up with these types of things, I think will probably encourage a greater adoption. What's a disadvantage of wider row spacing? Weeds, yeah. What do we care? We've got Roundup Ready corn, Roundup Ready canola. Resistance for sure. Any glyphosate tolerant weeds in southern Alberta?
No.
Maybe more than we want to know. Yeah, shoot, shovel, and shut up type idea. So were you gonna say something?
Well, I was going to get you later maybe to comment on the residue managers and the purpose they didn't pay that.
Yeah.
But so the canopy closure with something like corn, something that likes an open canopy, we're kind of unsure a little bit with canola, depending on how wide can we go and not sacrifice yield with some of our canola varieties and species, right? So that's one of the potential disadvantages. It's just too open.
And
Yeah.
anecdotally, if you're managing the crop well with wider row spacings and things go your way, it appears that there might not be a yield drag, but that's under kind of the right conditions. And depending on, not all fields, like even if you do have a planter and you want to plant some commercial canola, not all fields are suitable. Like if you have a field that maybe you just started renting this year and it's a little bit dirty, like that's not the field to be going in with this. But if you're a really, if the farmer is a really good manager, is on top of weed control and is out there scouting and managing, making sure that you're seeding it on time into good soil temperature, you've got adequate moisture, the lower plant populations might not be as bad. It's still risky. The lower you go, it's still risky, but it isn't really as black and white as we'd like it to be, I think.
You think about Hector's plots there. What happens if you have striped fleet beetle and you go on a wider row space and you're down at 1 or 2 pounds an acre? Becomes a risk
Got nothing
management
there.
tool. So
Yeah.
it's not necessarily about how can we save seed costs. It's about how can we do a better job at seeding, at improving seedling mortality and other things. Sometimes a slightly wider row spacing might be better for disease management. So sclerotinia issues, white mold type issues, if you can have that canopy a little bit open. But there's always trade-offs. This is our first year experience with the planter. I have to tell you, and we'll look at the plots in a few minutes, I'm pretty impressed with a number of things. First is the depth control, and that is very, very true. with these types of units, and we can actually come take a look at it. You want to hold this for me? So we've got our side banding nitrogen, so we're off to the side by an inch and down a couple of inches with the nitrogen, so that works great. In front we have these Yetter residue managers, so that's actually kind of a plus. You're pushing that residue off to the side, and you're actually blackening up the seed row. So one of the issues with zero-till or complaints sometimes is that you end up having colder soils and poorer emergence. So that type of a scenario actually will give the benefit to that seed row without having to compromise all of the positive benefits of keeping cover for moisture and such. There is a vacuum packet, a vacuum seal with a plate. For those of you that don't know about planters, I think I just picked the hardest one to open. Forget it, I'm giving up.
You got that top.
No, it comes right off.
These plates especially designed for canola?
No.
Because I know they've had trouble with that too.
It's funny, I've heard a lot about the issues with canola. I had absolutely no problems. We seeded 6 trials with this, 4 here in Lethbridge and 2 in Medicine Hat. We used 2 different types of plates to hit a wide range of seeding rates. We had no problem. We had perfect singulation. We had no doubles. Where we have a problem is getting too high of a seeding rate. So when we went up to 160 seeds per meter square, the issue becomes this disc is spinning so fast, it doesn't have a chance to suck the little seeds on. So basically it creates a vacuum, it sucks the canola seed right onto there, and then this little mechanism actually will just shoot it off. So in this case, this is the higher seeding rate plates. We have some where the spacing is different, but these are used for a million different crops, and you can get plates for basically any crop size, any seeding rate that you're trying to hit.
And I've actually heard, though, in talking to guys who've been using planters for a while, where you get your plates made does make a difference in how well they, even if all factors are the same, if the hole sizes are the same, the number of holes are the same,
Yep.
Where they're made sometimes has an effect on how much they clog. Your
course,
seed,
seed
how
size,
you
yeah.
seed size, how you carry, like if your bag of seed got thrown around a lot, and then you just kind of dump it in. Like I've heard of guys who go a little bit pretty far, and they, every time the bag of canola seed comes home, they carefully take it from the truck and they put it vertically, and then when they fill their canola or their bins, they just kind of scoop it out gingerly so that they're not getting any flakes on the bottom. And Ken has said they've had a pretty good year for that, but I know other guys, when you're doing large acreage, that can be a bit of a problem. And there are ways to manage that, though.
The truth is it's a higher level of management in a seeder. There's a lot more to it. It's a little more complicated. There's more moving parts, and it takes a different level of management. The truth is. So, but I mean, even us, like for example, with this type of soil with the heavier clays, I don't like these fertilizer discs. I need this soil to dry out probably an extra 2 days compared to this planter before we can go. Otherwise, we're pulling up lumps of soil. So there's always going to be little tricks that are going to need to be adapted for every different soil type and such. But one of the beautiful things about this planter is the parallel link system. So that's these 2 arms right here. And that's when, if you've ever seen Dr. Dwayne Beck talk about his planters, it all has a parallel link system. And it ends up pushing the disc and has a much better ride on the soil. So it follows the contours of the soil really, really nicely. I know of a grower that bought a corn planter just because of that and the residue cleaner, and he didn't even use the plates. He just ripped the plates out and said, I'm going to use a Valmar to seed the canola on the depth control. The other thing is this seed firmer right here. After the seed drops, that wheel presses it down into the ground, and you've got this perfectly level little line where all the seeds set and they're pressed into the soil. Then we've got our liquid and then our closing wheel. So it's kind of a neat system, a little more complicated, but not a bad system. Any questions on this?
I think the comment wind is really hard to deal with these.
I suspect.
That's the problem.
so if you want to come up, I'll show you. Don't be scared, man.
Don't be shy, Harv.
So if you see, you can't see there. So you see that there's this little window here. This is air is going in there. So if there's wind in here, you can see it's right exposed to it, right?
Yeah.
So then there could be issues with it. The wind literally blowing it off right out of the holes. So
Light seed, yeah.
it could be. We didn't have any issues with it this year. Again, only 1 year's worth of experience. And the other side of things is we kind of get used to this idea of let's hop in our seeder, especially if it's a disc seeder and going 7, 8, 9 miles an hour. I think with the planters, you just have to learn to slow down. Unfortunately, that's one of those more often than not, logistics trump agronomy, but depends on what you're trying to do. If you want to do a good job, I think the planter's pretty awesome.
Just seed in one direction, Ken. No, so.
See in one direction, there you go. So as part of this next study that we're going to look at, one of the things that that Autumn and the council had brought up is that we would like to have a better handle on seedling safety with seed-placed phosphorus. So that's that 1034 liquid. In this planter, you can see this is the liquid tube, and it drops the fertilizer right down on top of the seed row after it's been sort of packed a little bit, and then we've got the closing wheels. We also compared that to a liquid kit on our pillar laser system over here. So these are actually pretty cool openers too. They've got independent depth control, but nothing like so it's not like the rigid frame. Each one will rise and have its own tension. The liquid kit here, you'll see they've run the tube right down to where the seed opener is, and you'll have to come take a look yourself there.
It's really worth taking a look
But
because
literally what happens when the seed is coming out, it's getting sprayed with that fertilizer. So it's much more of a direct contact on the fertilizer versus this system, and it actually shows up in the plot as far as seedling safety. Obviously, I think what we're seeing is explained by this. There's actually more damage on this, even though we're with a narrower row spacing compared to the planter. So we're on a 9.5-inch row spacing with the pillar lasers, and on the canola we looked at a 12-inch row spacing and a 20-inch row spacing.
22.
No, we did 20.
Oh, you did 20. Never mind.
Sorry.
12-inch with that one?
We did 12 and 20 with that one.
How'd you do 12?
We had to muscle those buggers around. Yeah, it's actually not bad. We can change it in less than an hour.
But usually in most commercial, like if you were going to buy a commercial planter, the narrowest, you could get 12s, but they're tough to find. 15s are a lot more common.
Yeah, they can be set up however you want them, to be honest with you. Funny enough, Monsanto Canada has a research development team. Their entire team over Western Canada plants all of their canola trials with a Monosem planter now because they love it.
What's the seeding rate? 1.5?
So the other study that we have along that lines is the seeding rate study. We went from 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, and 160 seeds per meter squared. So basically 1, 2, 2.5, 3, 4, and 5 pounds per acre.
And that'll depend on your 1,000 seed weight, obviously, but for this.
Do you think 1,000 seed weight matters with that planter?
No. Variability of the seed.
I hear an absolutely and a no.
Germination.
Why is they for yes?
It wouldn't really, unless the seed size, unless you need to change the plate size.
Exactly. Because we're individually metering the seeds, whether the seed is half a gram or a gram, we're still putting that same number of seeds down.
Just that you're
Does it matter in an air drill? Yeah, because you're using a roller. So if that roller turns and your seed is half the size, you're putting out twice as many seeds. So in that sense, it doesn't matter with that planter. You know exactly, it literally counts every seed that falls out of each row. So it has that level of precision.
Ken, did you look at phosphorus and nitrogen rates here too with this?
Only phosphorus, seed placed phosphorus rates, and then seeding rates. Nitrogen is just a blanket rate
And
It's side banded.
how far side when that?
It's about 1.5 inches and about 2 inches deep to the side. Yeah.
pretty safe.
Yeah. Any questions? Or should we go plot hopping? There's a prize to the first person who literally plot hops.
This was seeded on May 16th and 17th. Lists the variety. This is 45H29. It's all 45H29. That was just what Farming Smarter picked. And so it got 100 pounds of nitrogen on the 9.5 inch row spacings. On the 12s, it got 102. And on the 20s, it got 105. So all about the same for nitrogen. And the liquid phos, it got 13.5 kilograms per hectare actual. And one thing that we were looking at when we were putting this trial together was trying to figure out how much phos we could actually put down. Because when you've got this really wide row spacing, you're essentially putting, when you're seed placing your phos, you're essentially putting double. If you've got 20-inch row spacing compared to 10-inch row spacing, your band of phos is double, is twice as hot basically. So we were really trying to figure out, okay, where are we going to see damage here, and how much can we actually get down? Because that is a really big consideration with planters. If you're in an area where you've got access to manure, your background phos is high, planters could have a bit of an advantage. But if you're in a situation where you've been mining phos for a number of years and you need to get enough product down, you really need to be seed placing it. If you go in broadcast phos, especially on the really wide row spacing, you might not have a prill of phos close enough to the plant so that it can actually, or to the seed, so it can be taken up and used for that pop-up effect. And as Ken alluded to, our rates that we thought would probably toast the crop didn't in the planter, but in the air drill it did.
Is this just seeding rate here? You got
Sorry,
phos?
this is seeding rate, and I got sidetracked on phos. Thank you, Rob.
And you mentioned was it about 13
13 kgs per hectare, yeah. So this is with the air drill. This is 20 seeds per meter squared. We would really not want to be targeting this with an air drill. In general, with an air drill, lots of data have shown us that we want to be targeting really between that 7 to 10 has been our traditional number for a plant stand, but Murray's kind of taking another look at those numbers with our new hybrids and thinks that it might be a bit of a tighter cluster, so maybe from that 6 to 8 plants per square foot. And so that's really going to depend on the year and what kind of stress your plants are subjected to. So this is the air drill with 40 seeds per meter squared. You can see it looks a little bit better. We don't have plant counts on these yet, but one of the things that Ken and the team are going to be looking at is the density of plants, but also the distance of plants between or within the row, which is one of the areas the planters generally have an advantage. So 40 seeds per meter squared. This is the precision planter at 12-inch row spacing, and this is 60 seeds per meter squared. So we'll try and find, this is kind of a little bit out of order. The rep over there isn't as great, so we opted to go here. But that second plot right there was the 9.5-inch space in the air drill at 60 seeds per meter squared. This is the 20-inch row spacing, or sorry, at 40. This is the 20-inch row spacing at 40 seeds per meter squared. So you can see within the row, mind you, they're really wide rows, but within the row you can see that the plants are nice and dense and uniform. And I think when people see planter trials, this is what they get excited about. They see these nice clean rows of canola, but what we really need to be cognizant of is how much space there is between the rows for weeds to grow. And so depending on your management style, or most of you guys are agronomists or industry here, so depending on the management style of your farmers, this may or may not be a good idea for them as far as from a risk management perspective. But at 40 seeds per meter squared, you can see that it's, within the rows pretty nice and uniform.
What relation is that? Like a half a pound an acre or a pound? Or
I don't know what is 1,000 seeds. Probably 40.
What does that
this,
equate to in pounds?
What are we at here?
This is 40
This is
on the
about 2 pounds
12s
an
too.
acre.
Oh, two. Okay.
Yeah.
So can I just, one other thing with the row spacing thing, that, and it was kind of work that's been done in the past, but it's just the inability of the plants to exploit that near surface moisture early in the season with wider rows. So there's a moisture loss thing associated with that too, which in some instances, so it's just the fact that your roots don't get into this zone very quickly.
Yeah, that's
here versus
interesting.
there, and there is a little bit of a moisture. And
Yeah.
Swift Current did that work,
Oh, did they? I'll have
you
to
know,
look
10,
at that.
10, 15 years ago. Yeah. It's-
So, and you can see here, this is the 160 meters seeds per meter squared, and you can see this is actually not really what you'd like as far as the number of plants in a row. These plants are going to be competing pretty hard with each other. And another way that Ken and the team are going to be measuring this is at the end of the season, going and doing a stubble count. So seeing how many successful plants. So we'll know how many plants per square meter there are here, but we want to know how many successful plants there were, because there's going to be self-thinning throughout the season. And when you have this many plants competing for space within a row, you're probably going to see more, but we'll have to wait and see what the data show.
What maturity will be also here?
So that's another good point. So generally, when we have wider row spacing, the plants are going to branch out a lot more, so it changes their physiology, and it makes it a little bit tougher to stage harvest. It's usually a little bit later to mature. Instead of when you've got a nice dense plant population that's really uniform, most of your canola yield will be coming off that main raceme. When you've got really thick branchy plants, most of your yield's going to be coming off the side branches. So that changes how you stage or how you stage for fungicide applications and for harvest at the end of the year as well.
Probably have fewer C4 weevil problems here because they tend to be attacking mostly the main seeds, so you can get most of your yield from the lower branches.
Maybe, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. We'll have to come and take a look through this in a couple weeks. So this is 20 inches again. This is 20 seeds per meter squared. And if you remember, that first plot we looked at was 20 seeds per meter squared with the air drill.
You know what, guys? I think you're gonna have to really focus in. Take a snapshot of this plot with your eyes and walk back to the air drill on 20. Okay?
Did you have an air
Come
drill
on in.
that
Click,
way?
click.
Or there?
Right here.
There was an air drill on 20?
Yeah.
Oh,
that's
not
what I'm
it's
saying
not
right
on
now.
it's
Oh,
not
not
on
20
it's
inches,
not
yeah.
on 20. So
Not
and
on
that's
20.
another thing to remember. What's that?
Sorry, not on 20.
No. So that's another thing to remember is
That's
it's
really
not
dramatic.
it's not wide. It's kind of a traditional management practice, an air seeder on 9.5s compared to a couple different options with the planter, because we generally see canola being seeded. A lot of it when it's going in on planters, a lot of it's going in on 20s. But there are some that are 15s as well.
That's
One
a-
thing comparing this one to that one is because of the wider row spacing, there's going to be more
More
seeds
plants
in the
per row.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
it's
you'll
kinda-
notice they're probably nicely evenly about 4 to 5 inches apart.
That's fantastic.
It doesn't
I mean-
look that bad.
So, but the thing to remember, and we don't have the numbers for plant counts in these, but the thing to remember is, you know, these look like nice even rows, and it looks really exciting to see, but we really need to remember risk management with this, because the plant populations are lower, you don't have as much room for error. So with wide row spacings, you can't really put a ton of seed down for a little bit of insurance like you could with a narrower row spacing. So while this looks good, we also want to be a little bit aware that it is more of a risk when you've got fewer seeds in the ground. It looks nice, but it is a little riskier and not suitable for everyone. So
Yeah, don't take this as a recommendation to go out and plant at 1 pound an acre. We when we're doing research, we have to look at the wide range to find where that optimum curve is as well. And I want to continue on. Let's look at this one though. Take a quick walk back here.
I'm going to say that it's comfortable for
So this, what does it say that sign there? 20 or 40? So here's our 20. Probably nothing. There's probably exactly what it should be. But like you said, like Blaine was mentioning too, narrower rows now means less seeds per row. That's why now we're going to have these big gaps between plants.
Also with the planter, you've got that parallel link. So we were finding that there was a little bit better, like in the next trial, right? We were finding as the ground. But as far as depth control, like they were a little bit more evenly seated.
One thing you can actually even see the there's some contour.
Yeah, this is a really ugly spot to put a plot, and part of me is disappointed that we didn't smooth it out and make it look better, but it's kind of reality, to be honest. And despite the fact that, you know, this is the same seeding rate, there's no doubt more seedling mortality, even at this low of a rate. And I think a lot of it has to do with that ability to contour properly. So we'll look ahead to some other plots and try to pick out those big differences.
But there is not?
No, they said
Yeah,
there is.
yeah.
So, but he said he was not aware of any research that said, well, what is an optimal distance that they should be?
And that's actually one thing that this study is looking at. So when they're doing data collection, they're looking at plant density, but they're also looking at the distance, because you know with sugar beets they've got to be what, 4 inches apart, 6 inches apart, something like that. So we know with sugar beets they need to be this far apart. Well, with canola, that hasn't been the way that we've seeded canola in the past, right? We know we're going on plant density. So what is the optimum, and how big of a deal is it to have them exactly spaced that way?
So air drill at 60. This is actually a good plot where you can see the contour effect. So we've got this spot right here where there's not a heck of a lot of plants that came up with the air drill. But when you look with the precision planter, everything came up all the way through. So that parallel link allows it to follow through even a tire track, and then you've got plants and much better uniformity. So
And the residue manager.
and the residue manager,
residue manager.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's what kind of excites me about the planter this year is that parallel link effect.
And there are a ton of options for planters too. Like you could buy one pretty bare bones that doesn't have residue managers, that doesn't have like Monosem makes like an aftermarket little feature that it takes the vacuum air and it blows it back through the hole to clean out any little flakes of seed treatment or something like that. So you can do that. There's little brushes that do it. There's tons of modifications. So you know, if you know somebody thinking about using them, just make sure that they're aware of what their options are, because it really helps mitigate some of the problems.
So what I was just talking about, we can compensate with higher seeding rates with an air drill. We've got an ugly tire track through here, 160 seeds per meter square. That's upwards 8 pounds an acre of canola seed. And we still have pretty crappy emergence rate here. We cut it back. What's the rate on this one?
80.
80 is about 4 pounds an acre. You still have really big bang opens, and then when you follow that track right here with the planter, it just disappears.
So those two are the same, just the drill's different.
Yeah, this is a planter, and that's our air drill with the pillar laser. Yeah,
So this
So do
is
you wanna-
12 and that's 9.5.
yeah, different row spacing, but do you want to talk about the phosphorus trials quick now?
Yeah. So as several more people are getting into using planters, people are asking how much phos they can actually put down, and we don't really have a ton, well, really any data about applying liquid phos on really wide row spacings. So we decided to try a few different rates, and Ken and I had some good discussions about what rates to use, and it turns out that with the planter, he was right. We all thought actually that it was going to get toasted, but because of the placement of the liquid, oh, sorry, didn't realize the bulky guys were back there.
There's people here.
Come on closer. So we were having a bit of a discussion on which rates to choose for this trial, because obviously you can't have 35 treatments. You've got to pick a couple. And so Ken was thinking we should go for higher, and on our side we were thinking we should go for lower because we thought the canola was going to get toasted with too much phosphorus. But Ken turned out to be right with the planter. And what he was showing you, if you guys, and if you have some time after it, it's worth going to take a look at the way the liquid comes out. So if you have clients that are looking for fertilizer recommendations, liquid phos recommendations to go on canola or other crops, it's really important to note where the liquid is coming out. So on the planter, Ken had mentioned that there's a bit of a seed firmer that pushes the seed down, and then the liquid phos, it's still in the seed row, but it comes out a little bit afterwards. But on their, I keep wanting to say Conservapack, but it's a pillar laser. Sorry. it comes out basically right where the seed comes out, right on top of it. So we actually saw a little bit of damage on the 9.5-inch row spacing that we didn't see on the 20-inch row spacing with the planter, which is really, it's really backwards, because as you can imagine, if this was 9.5-inch row spacing and you're applying, say, 20 pounds of phos per acre, if you have twice as many rows, then you have half as much phos in each row. So we don't really have an answer for you yet, and I think it's going to depend on a lot of things. But I think this trial will really help us get an idea of how we can play with rates depending on your opener. So I think we had, 4 kilograms, 8 kilograms. What do we have for our rates here?
I think it was 5, 10, 20, and 40.
Yeah, 0, 5, 10, 20, 40 kilograms per hectare, which is pounds per acre is about 90% of kilograms per hectare, if you guys want to think of it that way. So we can just start taking a look through here and see if you guys can see a difference between any of the plots. So this is the air drill, 9.5-inch spacing at 10 kilograms per hectare. And another thing to note, this site is actually a rarity for research plots. Usually research plots have really high background levels of nutrient, so it's really hard to get a visual response. We've got a tour in Lacombe, and we were trying to do fertility plots there for the end of June, and it's near impossible because we know we won't see any visual differences. But this site actually had a low level of phosphorus, so we should be able to see a response, and you can tell me if you think you do. So,
100 seeds per meter squared on this one. So.
And I think even for next time, like you'll see in the planter plots, 100 seeds per meter squared it's kind of too much. So here's the 9.5-inch row spacing at 10 kilograms per hectare, the 20s at 40 kilograms per hectare. So 40 kilograms per hectare should be doing some damage here, and we're not seeing that. So the air drill at 5 kilograms per hectare. This is the 12. This is the 12s at 0, so you could compare the 12s at 0, or sorry, the 20s at 0 compared to the 20s at 40. So do you think there's a difference between this one and that plot right there? Does it look like that to you guys? Maybe a bit of one? A little bit?
Oh, I don't think so. I wanted to make a quick observation here as well with this big mat of residue. Like, combine driver just stopped here, whatever. Look at the air drill, what happens there, and compared to the planter here. Yeah, it's kind of neat, eh?
What is your background P on this one, Ken?
Actually, the site across the road has the lower P background, and this one's a little bit higher here.
Yeah.
In the other rep, it looked like we were seeing more of a response from positive
that
amounts.
That was across the road, though.
Oh, okay, never mind. So this is 40 kilograms per hectare of phos with that 9.5-inch row spacing, compared to, well, really any of the 20-inch, but back a couple plots. So 40 pounds on 20-inch. From back there, you guys can't see too much, but even on the 20-inch row spacings for any of the other ones, 40 kilograms per hectare on 20-inch row spacing, it still looks fine with that one.
You guys put down granular with the seed. Sorry? 30 pounds?
Yeah, basically great. 30 pounds.
Yeah, with the granular. Anybody go higher than 30? Anybody seed anything or recommend how to fertilize? Harvey! How much phos do you put with the seed? With the seed, so it doesn't matter. 20 pounds actual. So then when you get into a spread, how far would you stretch it? 3-inch spread? 40. Yeah.
So I think what we really learned here, though, is the method of application is super important.
Yeah, it's tough to come out with rules of thumbs, because the other thing that happened this year, what happened around May 19th?
High temperature.
Rain.
Oh, we had a shitload of rain. So water will safe in any type of seed placed injury. I've actually had times where we put 100 pounds of actual nitrogen in a narrow knife and had no injury because we had a nice timely rain afterwards. So when we're going to see more fertilizer burn is definitely in the drier conditions, and we didn't have that this year. So this is basically the only plot 40 kgs, which is pretty close to pounds per acre of phos with the seed, and that was with the pillar laser situation. Any final questions on the canola?